everyone's been holding a lot of space.
Oh, yeah.
For
I didn't know that.
Particular song. And as
that's
members,
what I was trying to do. I'm so glad that you saw that.
Yeah, and as members of the queer media,
we saw some posts.
We've seen some posts.
Yeah.
Right. About holding space for it. I just think it's so lovely that everyone is holding the lyrics to March of the Witch Hunters in their hearts. I think that it's important to keep in mind. I think it's very empowering to hear things like, "Oh, witch hunters, I would join you if I could, because wickedness must be punished, 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 but good." Because we here in the queer community know there's a lot of good in that butt.
You want to punish that butt real good? Is that what you're telling me?
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast that wants to punish that butt real good. I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Bryans.
And I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
Welcome, everyone, this week to our coverage, our long-awaited coverage. You were battling at the You were battering at the gates. You were battling at the gates of Emerald City.
There's a lot of stuff happening at the gates, and that's why not nobody gets in. Not nobody, not know how.
That's right.
For our long-awaited coverage of the musical Wicked, and we thought, hey,
Broadway's back.
The movie's coming out.
Yeah, let's talk about not the movie.
Let's talk about the Broadway show.
Let's talk about the original Broadway show.
And Wicked's been running now, excluding the COVID shutdown, for like 20 years.
I want to check in with everybody's sort of exposure to this thing, because I have a very long history with Wicked, but I know that's not the same for everyone here. So, Brian, when did you first encounter Wicked?
Probably around the same time I was encountering most musical theater things, beginning of high school. I think my sister had been taking voice lessons and like sang popular for a voice recital. So I knew it from that, listened to the album, and then saw it in Phoenix when I was like I want to say a junior in high school, maybe a sophomore.
I was a big Godspell fan growing up. And so
your high school didn't do it, did they?
No, but it was one of those cast recordings that we just had on regular rotation in the Borman house.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
There were basically like 3 shows that we would always listen to the cast recording for. And it was Godspell, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and The Sound of Music. I've always been a fan of the way Stephen Schwartz does melodies. But in terms of Wicked itself, we, of course, all being chuggy millennials, we all experienced it, like the big boom of it in high school, because it premiered on Broadway in 2003?
It was
right?
2003. So we were in 7th grade or maybe 8th grade going into freshman year.
Right.
School,
So
I was younger than you. So
you were still in middle school. You were still firmly in middle school.
But so what I remember, growing up in Michigan is that then there ended up being a sit-down production in Chicago. And I don't remember how long that lasted, but I do know that a lot of the kids who were like in my school, who were big musical theater people, would, go down to Chicago, see the show. They'd have their lives changed for good. And I didn't really give a shit.
You were the rebellious teen who didn't play by the rules.
To be perfectly honest with you, it was more that I found all of the kids who were really obsessed with Wicked to be deeply fucking annoying. I never really felt all that strongly like engaging with it, because genuinely the people who were talking the most about it, it was just like, God, you are fucking annoying, and everything about this show sounds incredibly fucking annoying. And even though on paper there are things about it that I might be interested in, I just don't think I want to deal with this shit.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Had you managed then to like avoid hearing any of the songs?
Well, no.
Too?
I mean, you couldn't. Especially because
they were so annoying.
They were so exactly. They wouldn't stop fucking singing.
They're riffing,
and then
they won't stop riffing.
Either my freshman or sophomore year of high school, that for forensics, competitive speech and debate and interpretation. My school did a multiple interpretation of Wicked, where they very poorly. Sorry to anybody who's listening right now who is in that. I think there might be at least one of you who listens to our show regularly. It wasn't your fault. You didn't cut that shit, but that cutting was nonsensical. Right. It was ridiculous.
For people who don't understand, a multiple interp this sort of competition style of performance, you don't have like sets. Do you have costumes of any kind?
No, I mean you can wear like street clothing that kind of resembles
green.
Like they put our Elphaba in green. They put our Galinda in like a pink shirt and a little pink dress.
You have a handful of performers, and you're supposed to cut down the text to at maximum. How long is a multiple?
I think it's 15 minutes. Maybe it's 20. I can't remember.
15 to 20 minutes
for a show with this much plot.
And you're supposed to use only text from the material.
So
you
part
can't
of it,
add any words.
Part of it, I think, was like, wait, so is this show just nonsense? That was kind of my sense of it. Was like, this is a very plot confused show. And actually, in some ways, I think it is.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Oh, definitely.
But not in the way that I thought.
For my part, I saw it when I was 15 years old. I had heard nothing about it. We were actually in New York to see Hairspray because my parents had like won a raffle where it was like a trip to New York, and you get to see the cast of Hairspray and get to go backstage in Hairspray.
Sweepstakes every single day as a kid, AJ?
I'm an incredibly lucky man. It's weird. Like, I am Longshot from the X-Men, which means I'm going to die when I'm 40.
Is that a character whose mutant power is winning sweepstakes?
No, he's just incredibly lucky. His mutant power is that he is incredibly lucky.
I thought you were going to say he's just Irish.
Saints preserve us, I am getting shorter. So when I was 15, I went to see Wicked because it was just the other hot thing that was in town. And I think this was 2004 or 2005. It was, Chenoweth was gone at that point. But Idina was still there. Idina was still playing Elphaba. And I walked into this thing, and all I was told was that it had something to do with the Wizard of Oz. And I literally like was blown back in my seat. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about how the set design sort of plays into that. Josh, I was one of the annoying people.
Oh yeah, no,
in high school that
you would have annoyed the shit out of me. That's for sure.
I was pretty popular.
I liked it a normal amount. I was annoying about Stephen Sondheim musicals, and I was like, Wicked, it's good.
Yeah, well, and I was also a big Avenue Q head. For a long time, I sort of played into the like Avenue Q and Wicked have been put up against each other. I think kind of unfairly for a long time.
So depending on the day of the week, you were either going or shouting, and I can't wait to eat her pussy again.
Brian, if you could only know high school AJ, you will know how viciously you just dragged him.
You just got read for filth.
Shit.
This is what I was going to say, is when I said that you would have annoyed the shit out of me, I didn't mean like you as a person. Yeah. I just mean that like you would have been challenging my quirkiness in a way that I would have found uncomfortable.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would have wanted to corner the market on being the quirky guy, and I would have had a real trouble because there just wouldn't be room in town for the two of us. You know what I'm saying?
Before we get into talking about Wicked proper, we should probably talk about where Wicked came from, and what better place to start than with the Wizard of Oz and one L. Frank Baum.
You know, we hear he is a whiz of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was.
I mean, if
more and more are saying this,
it's probably got something to do with the wonderful things he does.
I would say it's probably that is the proximate cause. Yes.
Yeah, it's because of the wonderful things. So yeah, Lyman Frank Baum.
Lyman.
Yes. Huh. Yeah. Like John Arbuckle's lost roommate.
Yeah, or the late programmer and rule designer of many fantastic pinball machines in the 90s and early 2000s, Lyman Sheets.
Yes, John Arbuckle's lost roommate.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Loved pinball. That's why I had to get out of there.
So I'm going to keep this stuff pretty brief because there's a lot to talk about with Wicked. So I'm not going to go into Baum's own life. If we wanted to do that, we can always come back and just do an episode on the Wizard of Oz.
So Baum's away is what you're saying.
Baum's away. The basic thing was like he was the ultimate like late 19th century man. He was a frustrated hustler who worked in newspapers, stores, trade papers, theater, novels, anything that he could do. Like he ran a store of his own in South Dakota for a while, and then that went bust. And then he started running a trade magazine for people who make store displays. He ran a newspaper where he said horrifically violent and racist things about Native Americans on the reg. And I believe he was in his vacation home in Holland, Michigan, when he began to write The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
I'm sorry. Did you say Holland, Michigan?
Wait, Josh, do you not know this?
No.
You don't know about L. Frank Baum's connection to Holland,
home
Michigan?
Of the Reformed Church in America, Betsy DeVos and Sufjan Stevens?
That's right, Josh.
Wow.
Yeah, he saw a lot of brick roads in his day from upstate New York to western Michigan.
Hence Sufjan Stevens' song, Hark, there goes the man in the balloon flying into town to tell all the citizens of Oz that they need to reform. Hark, hello, ha.
Are you done dragging my husband?
He's my husband.
AJ,
He's my admirable husband.
AJ Diddy, who notably has never composed a long title for anything ever.
No. Never once. How
I
dare
love that
you?
you can't say Admiral Husband. You always say Admirable Husband. Like you're J.M. Barrie writing a sequel to the Admirable Crichton. That's a joke for Brian.
Gonna cause Dorothy Parker to shoot herself in the audience.
You don't know the Admirable Crichton? Jesus, you guys know nothing. Anyway, It's only 100 years old.
Nah, pearls before swine here, I'm afraid.
You know who else is 100 years old?
Who else?
L. Frank Baum.
Oh, he's much more than 100 years old because he writes The Wizard of Oz in 1900. That's when it gets published.
Yeah, that's 124 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, it's a big hit. So in the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West is kind of a main obstacle, but not the main obstacle to Dorothy. Okay. It's sort of like the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland, right? Book versus movie. So she is a dried up, literally dried up old hag. Toto bites her at one point and she doesn't bleed. She has one eye. She wears a big pointy hat that tells monkeys what to do. Doesn't have a broom.
The hat does that.
Yeah, the hat does it.
Oh, interesting.
And it only does it 3 times. Dorothy, of course, runs into her and dispatches with her, gets to the Emerald City. And then, like, when they unmask the wizard in the book, it's like maybe 2/3 of the way through the novel. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. And she has to end the story by going south to meet Glinda, the good witch, at the very end of the story.
So she doesn't go back to Kansas at the end.
She does go back to Kansas after Glinda's like, yeah, it was in the shoes. It was in the shoes the whole time. The Witch of the North is not Glinda. It's just this sweet old lady who kisses Dorothy on the forehead, and that gives her basically the mark of Cain. She's able to be protected from evil magic and all this other stuff. The slippers are silver in the book, not ruby, which isn't green. She's still an indelible image and a very important part of the book. But once Baum makes the stage musical adaptation of The Wizard of Oz in 1902, there's no witch in it.
Okay. So this is totally different music from what you get in the original, the actual Wizard of Oz movie?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally different music. All that music in the movie in the 30s is contemporary.
Okay.
Baum works with a couple of different composers. It's a little bit more vaudeville. It's a little bit more sketch comedy and a little bit more adult oriented, by which I don't mean it's like no one's taking their clothes off or nothing, but it's just for grown-ups to come and see in Chicago, where it plays over 200 performances.
I think there's something kind of interesting about the, mirror or parallel or whatever between that successful Chicago production and then the much later successful Chicago production of Wicked. Yeah.
Then, of course, it plays on Broadway a few times over the next couple of years. And the way that engagements worked is like, if you did 200 performances of something, you did real good.
Mm-hmm.
And again, no Wicked Witch of the West. There's not even a Glinda. There's no Glinda in the story. Then Baum, off of the success of this book, writes 14 sequels, 2 of which are published posthumously. The publishers of these books take over after he dies and entrust canonical sequels to a couple of different authors, of which there are 26.
Wow.
So there were lots of movies. There were a ton of movies being directed. By the end of the first decade of the 20th century, Baum had to declare bankruptcy and lost the rights to the first book of The Wizard of Oz. So the movies that are being made and the publications of the first book, that money's not going to him anymore. So Baum starts his own film company. He first tours a show called Fairy Log that is a combination stage production, collection of short films, and Magic Lantern presentation, basically a slideshow. That's a tour that he starts in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
How about that? Fairy log, that is LOGUE, like a travelogue, but for fairies.
Yeah. He takes that around, it sells out, but it loses a ton of money. It was too expensive to put on. So that goes on. He starts producing his own films in the 1910s based on the sequels that he still has the rights to. Right. The issue of rights relating to Wizard of Oz becomes just this constant bit of confusion.
Well, in so much of this too, because the rules around copyright back then were fundamentally different from what they've become in a post-Disney world. Right. Which, by the way, just wanted to point something out here real quick.
Yeah.
I'm Mickey Mouse.
Oh, that's true.
Good. Very, very important.
Well, and the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the book, is public domain and has been since the mid-50s.
Right.
So you can produce your own production of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz based on the book starring Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Yeah, the earliest surviving film based on The Wizard of Oz is from 1910. And you can watch it anywhere. You can watch it straight on the Wikipedia page if you want to.
Oh, wow.
Glinda becomes a more prominent character in these film adaptations as the singular Good Witch. We no longer have two Good Witches because, in part, the Good Witch of the North doesn't have a name in the books, and Glinda has a name. And so you also see this with the evil witch being depicted in the movies as Mombi. Mombi is a character who shows up in the sequels.
I prefer Dadby.
Oh. Okay.
Josh is the size of an average human Mombi.
It's true.
So they move away from the Wicked Witch of the West for a while as the primary antagonist. And again, some of these films just don't even have that part of the story. There's enough crazy shit that you can pick from that you're just like, we're going to focus on this thing, and this thing, and then do a little bit of blackface. And then there we go. We've got a picture. And so all of these movie adaptations are silence before the MGM 1939 film, aside from one cartoon, like a 7-minute cartoon.
Now, in 1939, talkies were still not entirely common, right?
No, talkies were the whole thing. You really didn't get silent movies anymore other than independent films.
It was swift, that takeover.
Yeah, 1930 was the inflection point.
Got it. Okay.
Where like theaters just had to fucking eat that expense and change everything over to sound, and everybody wanted sound. And so by 1939, you could bet that you were going to see a talking picture, but you wouldn't necessarily bet that you were going to see a color picture. But there were some big color pictures. Gone with the Wind also came out this same year. And the only game in town for color at this point in time was Technicolor. So what Technicolor is a process where you shoot your film on one camera with 3 strips of black and white film running through it. Each strip is behind a different color filter. Okay. Red, green, and blue. Ooh. And then through something called a dye transfer process, you are able to make a full print that has all of the colors on it. And as a result, you need a lot of light to be able to make it.
Right.
And the colors that it produces are very unnatural and very spectacular. Right. So you want to take advantage of that wherever possible, right? See also Scarlett O'Hara's bright red hair and big green dress. So what they do to take advantage of that is they adapt some things in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz to make it more fun in Technicolor. The yellow brick road was already a yellow brick road, so they were good on that front, primary color-wise. But they take the silver slippers that Dorothy has and make them into ruby slippers because red looks unbelievable in Technicolor.
Yes, because that's one of the colors. Again, you are using an RGB process. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming it's the same thing with the Wicked Witch of the West, right? That green, just the way it pops.
Exactly that, Josh. Yeah. Yep. Instead of just being a dried up old lady, they turn her fucking bright ass green.
Right.
But by making the slippers ruby, we lose the original intent of Baum to talk about the silver standard.
Okay. No.
Walking over the gold standard. I've got charts.
Yeah.
Brian.
Well, that's the thing. Is like you have these critics starting in like the 60s. Some guy is like, I'm going to apply like a C.S. Lewis level of reading to this where each thing means definitively this other thing that's in the real world. The Tin Man represents like the problems in Pittsburgh, and like fucking the silver slippers represent bimetallism and William Jennings Bryan's Cross of Gold speech. There's probably some truth in there. Everybody had silver on the brain at the end of the 19th century. However, there's nothing really supporting that from Baum himself. I think I think you can say, yeah, sure, it's a motif that was in society at the time, but not say that this was a book about how great it will be once we move to a dual standard for our
but you don't
currency.
understand. Stanley Kubrick admitted that he faked the moon landing in The Shining, Brian.
So many possibilities.
Hey there, you are listening to a preview of a premium episode of The Worst of All Possible Worlds. If you'd like to listen to the rest of this, head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/worstofall. And you can listen to not only the rest of this episode, but our entire backlog of premium episodes, bonus episodes, and if you subscribe at the $10 tier, you will get an extra episode of the podcast every single month. Again, that is patreon.com/worstofall. Hope to see you there.